This is Amud Yomi Gemara and Shabbos. Daf Chof Amud Beis, an exciting day, B'siyata D'Shemaya in the world of Amud Yomi, as we wrap up the first parak of Shabbos, moving into the famous Bameh Madzalikin. We pick it up in the bottom of Chof Amud Aleph, Amar Rav Huna, as we conclude the different types of fires, different types of woods, etc. Says Rav Huna, Konim, 5 lines to the bottom when it comes to reeds, Ein Shricham Roiv, they don't have to have the Roiv of them catch fire during the day. Agadon, but if they're tied together, if they're loose sticks, they don't need Roiv. But Agadon, if they're tied together, then yes, Shricham Roiv, then they need to have a Roiv to catch fire while it's still day. Garinim, loose pits, Ein Shricham Roiv, don't need to have a Roiv. Nisanim B'chai Salas, but if they're in a basket, then Shrichim Roiv, then they need a Roiv. Says Gemara Maskler Rav Chisda, asked Rav Chisda on this last din of Rava. Adarabba, Imcha Mistavra, says Rav Chisda, Konim Ibadadron, when they're loose items, they're scattered, and therefore maybe they won't all catch fire if some of them do. And therefore it would make more sense that the Roiv has to be on fire. Whereas Agadon, when they're bound together, they're not going to scatter. So therefore, once part of it is caught, it's all going to catch. Why do you need a Roiv in that case? Similarly, Garina, when it comes to the pits, they might scatter. So why did you, Rava, teach that when they're bound, when they're in a basket, then you, yes, need Roiv? Says Rav Chisda, Misvara, logically, the exact opposite would seem. It's Marnami, says the Gemara, return of the Chavam Beis, Amar Rav Kana, Konim Sha'Gadam Shrichim Roiv, Loi Gadon, Ein Shrichim Roiv, Garin and Shrichim Roiv, the son of Bechai Salois, Ein Shrichim Roiv. Exactly like was just suggested, that when it's bound, then you don't need Roiv. No, excuse me. When it's bound, then you need Roiv. Loi God, you don't need Roiv. But when it comes to Garinim, once it's Nasa Bechai Salois, then Ein Shrichim Roiv. So the Gemara is proving the second part of that which we just asked. That at least we see by the baskets that when they're together, you don't need Roiv. It's true. In the first part, Rav Kana is being masking. And he's agreeing that you need Roiv even when they're bound together. But we're asking for the second part. Tana Rav Yosef, Arba, again, it's not really, I keep on saying it's a kasha. It's a mask of Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda is arguing. He's saying that pshat is the opposite. That if it's bound together, that's when you do not need Roiv. We're proving from Rav Kahana that he agrees in the case of the basket. Tani Rav Yosef, Arba Medura saying Roiv. 4 fires do not need Roiv. Shall zephes, pitch, shall cover sulfur, shall gvina, cheese, shall revav or grease. But masita tana, av shall kash, shall gvava, straw or stubble are the same. Amar Rav Yechon Eitzim shall Pavel Ein Shrichim Roiv, and again, these all have to do with the size of the fire, the type of the fire, the flammability of the fire. Different items that are more flammable will not need to be as lit before Shabbos, because of course they're going to light into Shabbos. Masal Rav Yosef Maigi, whatever Yechon mean when it said by Eitzim shall Pavel. Ilema silsa. I'm talking about silsa, strips of wood that they use normally in Bavel. How can you tell me you don't need a roiv? Hashed up sila. Regarding a wick, which of course is more flammable than wood. Amr ulam adlik sarach shalik b'roiv hayoytzei. Silsa mi boyi elam Rav Yosef. You know what he meant by Yitzim shal Bavel? Soicha da'arza. He mentioned the branch of the cedar tree. Rami Barabba Amar Zaiza, referring to moss. And again, different items that are highly flammable. Hadron Aloch Yitzias Shabbos, quite a lengthy parak, one that certainly is time to begin a Chazara. And for now, we dive into the second parak of Amem Malikin, the famous parak that's going to begin by discussing what is allowed to be used for wicks, for fuel, for Shabbos. Says the Mishnah, Chafam Beis Amem Malikin, Rahim Malikin, with what do you let a light for Shabbos? And what are you not allowed to light? Ein maligin, you cannot light loy belechesh, cedar bass, loy bechayisav, loy bechalach, flax that's unprocessed, or silk, loy besilas, either loy besilas hamidbar, willows or different fibers, loy berukshav ne'amayim, moss from the water. Says the Gemara in the flip, and it says the Mishnah continues, loy bezefes, loy b'shaiva, neither pitch nor wax, loy b'shem kik, loy b'shem sreifa, oils, as well. The sheep's tail, the fat or the tallow. No, chele mevushal. Once it's cooked, then you could lay with it. Ein malikin loy. So the first Mishnah begins that some items you could and some items you can't light with, and the Mishnah lists all the different items that you cannot utilize as fuel for Adlakas Neiros Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Lechesh, what is that? Sheicha de Arza, the back of a cedar tree. Sheicha de Arza eats Malmus. Says the Gemara, what do you mean? But that's regular wood, so of course you cannot use it for a wick. Bim amranita de iswe. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah means that you can use the woolly substance in the bark. Apparently, there's some areas that you can take out and make a wig from it. That's what the Mishnah means you cannot use. What is chaysen? Piece of flax. The Basik says, and the chaysan if it's 4 neuras, which are these pieces of flax, clearly it's not the same thing. So how can you translate? That's what the word means. Elam Rabbaye, Kitana de Daig Vlanofis, flax who's being and not combed, and therefore just different stages in the flax production that we are referring to. We're smacking middle of the Amid of Chafam Beis. You can't use chalach for fuel. Amr Shmuel. Shaltinu chol nechut yama of Amri La. Kulcha shemei. The what's kalach is kulcha. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Ziri Amar kushkirab. It's a type of silk. Ravin v'Abai Av Yosef came to Rabbana Nechemya. Achud Rish Galusa. They were sitting in front of Rabbana Nechemya, brother of Rish Galusa. Chazi Dave Lovish B'Tachsa. They saw he's wearing silk. Amrli Ravin Abaye. Ravin said to Abaye, Hainu kalach l'tnan. This is kalach that we learned to the Mishnah. Amrle, Abaye said back to Ravin, Anan Shira Paradna Karina law. We call it Paradna silk. Meisvei, yes, really? Ashirayim v'kalach asrigi chavim b'tzitzis. So we see that these are all items chayv and tzitzis, but we see clearly that kalach is not regular silk. So how can you tell me it's one of the same? Tiyofta the Ravin, Tiyofta Yibaisema. Shir lecha v'shir parnada lecha. Or maybe there are 2 different types of silks. Therefore, there's no kasha at all. And we continue on the second wide line, which is what says the Gemara achvina. This again is that woolly part between the bark and the back of a tree. They're walking in the valley of Tamurita. So they saw a willow tree. This is the Idan of the Mishnah. Who eats bamboo? No. That's a regular tree. What do you mean? How are you able to use that for wicks? Kolav Rava peeled off the back bark. He showed him some of that woolly stuff between the bark pieces inside. That's what the Mishnah is referring to. Desert fiber, which is what shavra, tall grasses you cannot use for wicks. Not the green that is on top of the surface of water. Maihi says the Gemara, what is this? 5 lines from the bottom. It's the dark greenish, it's the algae that grows on the surface of the water. If ruchim avarchim, but says the Gemara, that crumbles, you can't make that into wicks. The greenish substance that's underneath of a boat, you sometimes feel on the bottom of the water, bottom of an item, that the mossy type of item, that's what we're referring to in the Mishnah. Tana, we learned in a Braisa, they added on wool and hair. Wool curls, burns, and therefore you can't use that either way. Can use zephes and shava, zephes zifta, shava kiruta, zephes is pit, shava is wax. Tana, we learned in a Mishnah, ad kam psol psilis. Till here, these are the wicks that are pasul. Psol shamanim is oil. Says Mar Pshita. Of course, that pitch and wax referring to the fuel and not to the wick itself. Shaiva tzrichle. Mao the table of psulas nami loichazi. Maybe wax is not available for candles as well. Kamash malan. That wax is allowed to be used when it is in the lamp and it is being used as the fuel. Then it's not a problem. Pick it up from here, Amir Hashem.